Hi, I'm Matt Barron, and I had a friend ask me recently how I build my website and the cool applications that I'm building using AI and Claude Code. So I'm here to show you how I'm doing that. Before we get started, just know that disclaimer, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not a security expert. I'm not a coding expert. You should not trust me. Anything that you follow that I do will make your entire life crumble around you. You will crash and burn. It will be the worst situation ever. And don't take my advice. And if you'd like to continue and throw caution to the wind, here we go. So before we get started, there's 3 bits to Claude Code. There's chat, which is typical LLM. There's cowork, which is going to run on your computer, great for running stuff in the background. And then there's code. And I've never used this version of code. I don't really know what this is like. Maybe there's definitely some things I'm missing out on here that I need to go into and figure out. But I'm not quite there yet. And that's okay. Welcome to AI. So the first thing that I always say to everyone is that if you can build things really fast, you need to spend more time not building. So everything that's not building is what you want to spend more time on. And as such, you want to go to something like this and just start planning. And you're going to put in a prompt that says something like, let's plan. And then you're going to describe your project. Now, I did this already when I started this video and made an error. So I'm doing it over and I just copied my prompt. But really, basically, all I'm doing is just word salading everything that I want to do. I'm about to plan a website. It's going to hold all my projects. It's going to match some branding on my page. It's going to have a place for projects and a place for me to share information about the projects, screenshots, pictures. And it's going to be part of these other websites called, we're going to make it thebaron.com. And it should also match my other website, which is mattbarron.com, so that they look similar. And of course, there's going to be some there's going to be some crossovers, so we should look at these two together. The website should be flat HTML and JavaScript. I don't want to have personal information, so we don't have to worry about security so much. We're going to host it on GitHub Pages, and I've already bought the domain on Porkbun. So now you kind of get that I'm putting together some infrastructure. I'm kind of giving it some idea of how I'm going to do this. And I chose those technologies because it's what I'm familiar with, and it's what I've built a lot of projects on Claude Code with. You can choose other technologies, but I'll kind of talk about what they need to have so that you're building the right things. So it does this planning for me. It's going a little bit overboard, of course, as these LLMs do, unless you guideline them. But it is planning out kind of the structure based on what I said. It's going way overboard, but it is talking about the technical stack here. So this is great. 5 sections make sense. We can share CSS if we want. Do I want it to be private or public? Okay, so here's some questions. 1, it can be public. 2, let's figure out how many active projects should prior to the show at launch. Let's show the top 5 recently updated projects with options to explore further, filter, etc. I like a single page layout, but that doesn't seem realistic for this project. Maybe the single page is like a summary of my most recent updates, and then you can go to a subpage to see it all. Does that make sense? So I'm of course showing you a lot more than you need to see, But you want to drill down this kind of stuff. You want to get these designs in place so that um, you kind of know where you're headed. Not you don't want to boil the ocean, so you're not trying to get perfect in these designs, but you do want to have the right scaffolding in place to go where you're headed. And so if you want, you can plan this thing out to the nth degree to go crazy and then pare it way back and say, okay, now show me what the first steps should be. And then you work on that. But it's really hard to have the discipline to do that. So here it's laying out some of the things, key structural data, want me to scaffold the file structure. What I want you to do now is translate all this so that I can put it in Claude Code and start building it. So now this is going to give me something to hopefully copy paste into Claude Code, or it will write a file to my computer locally for Claude Code to pick up. Looks like it's a copy paste. So we're going to copy paste this. And it's still generating, so we're going to wait for it. But once it's done, we'll paste that over. Okay, looks like it's done. So I'm going to just copy that, and I'm going to go over to my terminal where I installed Claude Code. And I actually have 2 instances on this computer, so I'm just going to start up my Claude Personal. You obviously don't type Claude-Personal, you will just type Claude, and that will start up Claude. It's going to ask you, hey, do you trust this folder? Because it's running in the Claude folder, so make sure you trust it. And here's Claude Code. Very simple. It's telling me what model it's using, Sonnet 4.6, and I'm using Claude Max. I still have a few days left in my Max subscription. And if you need to, you can switch the model at any time by doing /model. So there are a lot of slash functions to do things. And in fact, I'm going to do this right away. I'm going to /rename and call this thebaron.com. Now, all that does is name my session so that I can remember what this one is about. And that's great because when you kill Claude, which on Mac is command period twice, when you kill Claude, you can go into Claude and you'll say Claude and not personal, but I'm saying personal because I have 2 instances. And then you say -- resume. It's going to show you your most recent projects and you can select them. So I can go to the Baron and there's my project. So now I've got this scaffolding in place. I've got this thing in my clipboard that I can paste in there. I've got my infrastructure set up. I don't have my GitHub repo set up, but all I have is thebaron.com so far. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that in, and it's going to guide me through all the steps of setting up this website and populating the content, testing it out, pushing it to GitHub, all the configuration, and I won't have to know any of it. But what I will need to watch out for is when Claude is doing things that I don't want it to do. And so that's where a large part of your learning is going to come in. So without further ado, let's paste and run. So you can see how it pastes stuff. It's a little weird. Just trust it. It does actually paste what you want in there. You can, I'll cover some more things on Claude Code right now, but you'll see it running, of course. You can also drag in files and drag in images, and it does see that stuff. Some other things that you'll want to do is you'll see it's going to run now, and then it's going to pop up warnings because it asks for permission. And by default, it doesn't have a lot of permissions. So it's going to ask you for a lot of things. And you can choose if you want to give it permission this time or just for this session or not to do it and cancel. And so what you'll see is that is the primary thing that we are going to be doing. And so oftentimes when it's asking what it can do, I'll have to Google what it's doing to know what it's doing on my computer to make sure that it's safe. And that is the key here, is that you're trying to protect yourself and you're trying to protect your data because you just don't want any gaping holes in your security. So that's really the big caveat here. I wouldn't be using this to store other people's personal information. Don't use this to store financial information or personally identifiable information. Certainly not anything you want to keep secret. For those sort of things, I run applications locally. So I'll build applications with Claude Code and run them on my computer, making sure that Claude doesn't have access to the data. So I'll make local apps, little web apps. And then for stuff that I'm doing on the web, I just make sure that it doesn't have any personal information. Now, there are some places where you'll need to store secure information that you don't want Claude to have. So that will include things like API keys. Um, and so for that, you will also need something to store those API keys securely. And this is difficult because Claude, in order to do this, needs access to the files on your computer. And oftentimes in a project, you will have a file, a .env file that stores a lot of those keys. And in order for Claude to write that file, Claude would need access to those actual numbers. And you don't want that. You don't want Claude being trained on your API keys and your secret tokens. And so what you'll see that I do is I store them in 1Password. And so Claude can actually reference those API keys as dynamic values without actually seeing the value. And then it pairs that over to my code when it's running. So anytime that I need to use one of those API keys or a secret key, it's either stored on GitHub, so GitHub can reference itself dynamically, or it's stored in 1Password and it needs my bio identification to run. And Claude never has access to any of that. So that's kind of like the secret sauce to how to do things securely with Claude. And now I come up on my first warning. So it's coming back to me and it's saying, hey, I'm going to build this whole thing. Let me check what's in your documents folder. If there's a reference to my website, it's going to look at everything. It looked at everything. So you can see I've already given it access to search my computer at all times. So that's something you might have had to approve that I don't have to approve because I've already approved it globally. And now it talks about the style, how my website looks. It's going to run a bash command. So it's actually making a folder here called in my documents folder called thebaron.com. I don't love that it has a dot in it, but whatever. And then, so that's what it's running. It ran a make directory. And what it's trying to do, it's trying to run this bash command. So it's trying to do this mkdir, which I happen to know is make directory. If you want to and you don't know that, you would Google this and see what it's trying to do. Because you're going to give it permission to do this. And maybe you're going to give it permission to do this forever. So you need to make sure that you know what you're doing. And so this is warning that it's doing brace expansion. And so it's actually, it's going beyond the scope that I originally gave it access to do. And the computer's just checking to make sure, hey, is this okay for them to go to another folder, make a new folder, go beyond what you already told it to do? And I'm just going to say yes and let it happen. So now what is going to happen now is you'll get that question lots of times and you'll kind of get used to, you'll learn what the commands are that it needs access to. And so you'll be able to skim it and answer those questions a lot faster and give it access to things for the full session. So like, for example, thebaron.com is going to have a /index.html file. I guarantee it. If Claude doesn't go crazy. And so when it asks if it can edit that file, I'm going to say yes every time. So when it asks, it's going to say yes or yes every time or no. And I'm going to say yes every time so that I don't get prompted for that anymore. That way it kind of improves the flow. And to this effect, you need to be really careful about group approving things because you don't actually want it running some things all the time. So for example, with the 1Password where it's storing my API keys, there's a couple commands where it could actually pull the API key from 1Password and write it locally and then read it locally. It has the ability to do that. So I have to watch these commands and make sure that I'm not letting it ever do that print statement from 1Password. I hope that makes sense. You can kind of see how being technical really helps here. You don't need to be a coder, but you do need to think technically. So if you're a systems thinker, this is sort of like, and not a coder, this is sort of like your dream tool. And it's one of the reasons that I love this. So now it's asking if it can create a CSS file. And I can say yes, or I can say yes, allow all edits during the session. Now, since it's saying all edits during the session, I don't know exactly what that scope is. So I'm just going to be safe this time and just hit yes. And then if that style CSS thing keeps coming up, then I'll say yes every time, because I don't want to approve it every time it's just changing CSS. And I'm sorry about all the acronyms in here. I sort of forget that CSS, HTML, like I'm saying a lot of technologies really quickly. So if you need to pause and go back and search any of those, please do. But just know that CSS is what runs the formatting of your website, and the HTML runs the data, basically. HTML can run the formatting too, but it's easier to do it this way, or more segmented. So now it's talking about creating style CSS. I'm just going to say yes again. If that comes up again, though, I'm going to say yes every time, because I'm not gonna, if it's style.css, number one, let's say it overwrites it. Let's say I give it access to style.css and I didn't want it to. Well, that's not really that big of a risk, because number one, who cares if this website looks bad? It's not launched. But also number two, I would use Claude to fix it. So not that big of a risk, right? And so that's kind of one of the other things that you end up switching when you're thinking of building this way. Your code work doesn't, it scales better than it ever has. Your code work your building work scales better than it ever has. And so you can take some of these developer paths that you would have avoided in the past and take them. For example, large data work, like for instance, here, look at this, this. If this is all my projects and I put all these in and I put them in as the wrong date and I need to change all this and how this is structured, doing it with Claude Code is really fast, because working with data is super fast. Now, in the old days, I would have had to do that all manually. And so that's not very fun or easy, time consuming. It's terrible. And so the paradigm has shifted. You can do things the messy way sometimes better than doing it in a well architected way. It may come back to bite you in the butt, but oftentimes Claude will save you from that. So now it's asking if I want to create this JavaScript file. I'm just going to say yes, because it needs it. What it's doing right now is it's building out the project data. So it's decided it's going to store everything in a JSON file, which is a string of data. Kind of looks like this, actually, where it's just commas and colons and field names, and it's just raw data. And then what it's going to do is it's going to use JavaScript to render that on the web page. So here it's asking, can I create this render JavaScript file? I'm just going to say yes. And there are some things where I don't actually dig that deep. JavaScript is one of them. I don't like reverse engineering JavaScript. So if Claude's asking to edit it, a lot of times I just say yes, because JavaScript is usually fairly innocuous. But I'm just going to let this run. While this is running, I'm going to do one thing that I know it's going to ask me to do later, and that's to change my DNS settings. So for that, I am going to go to my DNS provider where I bought my domain, and their name, let me just make this smaller so I can capture it. Their name is Porkbun. This is my domain provider. And if I go to my domains, I should have thebaron.com. Here we go. And I am going to set up DNS. And what I love about Porkbun is that it has some pre-configured stuff. So I can do a quick DNS config by just clicking GitHub. It's going to write my correct DNS records. And then it's asking for my CNAME. So it's going to ask for, oops. Okay, updated my DNS. Now this is the A address record. So this, I don't know what this does. Here you configure custom DNS records for your domain. A record, leave blank to create it. I think I just leave this blank. I don't really know. I'm just going to hit add. Oh, I have to provide an answer. I think it's star, maybe. Let's see. Maybe it's at. So I'm stuck. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for Claude to be ready. So I can ask Claude what to do here. So here you can see me hitting one of my technical boundaries. Now, I would usually Google this or go to Stack Exchange, but it's actually much easier for me to just wait for Claude to be done for me to ask, because it has all this context already and it knows what I'm going to be trying to do. So it obviously makes sense to do that. I could also start a new Claude Code instance right now and ask it while this is running. Totally effective, totally useful. And I don't know how much longer this is going to run, so I can be patient. But here, I'll show you. It's creating project.html. Creating learning HTML. Work bun is asking for an A record entry. And I'm setting it up. What should that be? A repo name? Creating media.html. Now it's adding no Jekyll file for GitHub pages and verify the structure. So this is doing a touch command. This is very low impact. So I want to do that. Okay, and here, this is going to open it in my browser as a test. So I'm just going to say yes. And here we go. So this is the HTML. This is the web page as it's built it. Here's the Baron. Here's the projects, writing, learning, media. And you can go to my website from there. There's a dark light mode, just like my website. Here's my top 5 projects. Obviously, I should change that to 6. Some recent writings. Oh, interesting. It pulled my newsletters from my website. That's cool. Where did it get this one from? Oh, it's just a project. It just captured a project. Cool. I don't even know where it got some of this data. So that is fascinating. Wow. I think it's actually pulling a couple different I think it's pulling from sources I don't actually want it pulling stuff from. This looks like this was an experiment I ran. It's interesting. It might be pulling some of this from my to-dos. So that is some spillover I did not expect. It's really interesting that it wrote some of this for me too. Like this, it wrote about this project. That's kind of interesting. It has some really, look, it tells you my infrastructure. Wow. Okay, this is cool. I like this. So this is actually something that I would publish and I like it, but you can see it's running locally. So now what we need to do is we're going to go back to Git or to Claude, and it's going to guide us through this. So now what is it doing? It wants to run it locally, and it wanted to open the subpages. Okay, go ahead. Yep. I know the subpages. I've been into projects. Yep. I don't need to open the subpages in the browser. Okay. Now let's go back to pork buns and see what's happening here. Yeah, so I think it needs these IP addresses from GitHub. And actually what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go here, make this a little bit bigger. And I'm just gonna take a picture of it and upload this to Claude and say what I need next is help setting this up in pork bun to redirect the URL to the GitHub page. So now it's going to read that image and it's going to tell me what to do. I think that this is actually right, though. It needs to be all of these IP addresses. So we're about to find out. Yep. So we're just going to do that. It's 108 through 111. Post you leave blank. Okay, so I got to put these in the value. Yeah, it's already got these entered because of the template. I wonder why it's asking for, oh, this is just the screen to, oh, I can just close this. It's already set up. What am I doing? I didn't even need to do that. Hitting the GitHub thing worked. I just didn't notice that this automatically has a form up at the top. Wow, that's a UI flaw, pork bun. If you see this pork bun, you're gonna want to change that. Anyway, ignore the rest of this. The DNS is set up already. In fact, if I go to thebaron.com, yep, it's already pointing to GitHub. So fantastic. So now what I need to do is it's telling me what to do next. Now on the GitHub side, I need three things. I need to create a repo, push the Baron folder to a repo, add CNAME file to the repo, and enable GitHub pages in repo settings, etc. GitHub's going to give you an SSL. That'll take a little while. And do you want me to create the CNAME file and initialize the GitHub repo in the project folder so it's ready to push? Yes. Please do all that for me. Now, there is going to be one thing that it's going to ask me to do, I think, manually, but we will do that in a minute when it gets to that point, and I'm going to close this other Claude Code thing that I opened. So now it's just doing a GitHub check to see how I've got it set up. See and make sure that it's ready. It's going to create a file, a CNAME file for me in GitHub, which I do need so that GitHub knows where to point the domain. And now it's going to change the directory and do an initial build using GitHub. Yep, the Claude plugin. So now it's actually doing the git init. It's creating the repo. And repo just stands for repository. Now it's live. And I need to enable GitHub pages. So it is running a GitHub command to do that, and I'm going to allow it. It's going to have some errors here. This is pretty common for it to have GitHub errors because, especially at this point, because we've never done an authentication before. So sometimes there's keys that you'll need to create. So here it's telling me everything's done. Here's what was set up. Give me the repo. It named it this. Did all that. Did the code push. It enabled the custom domain. Now I have to add the 4A records on pork bun, and I did that. Wait for it to propagate. I think that'll basically be done. Then it will be live, and you can check the status here. So let's take a look at that. Then it created this file. Do you want me to create? Oh, then what I have programmed into Claude globally is that anytime that it builds projects or updates projects, it writes to this file and tells me what the project is about. And anytime it makes updates, it updates that to tell me what the project is about. So this is really like its working memory. You can do this a lot of different ways, but I find it very useful. Highly recommend you set up something like this. Just call it like sessions, or, you know, something where Claude can just remember for itself. I'll make another video on this too, because I have some really cool hacks for it. But in this case, it's just going to create a markdown file and let me know what it's working on. And I'm just going to say yes. Now we can check. I don't know. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it just works. I don't think so, though. I think I have to set up something on GitHub. Nope. It just works. Thebaron.com is already live. So here you can see the web page is already live. It's got good HTML, link to my GitHub, link to my LinkedIn. You know, it's kind of everything you would expect, but there's already stuff on here that I don't want. Like these projects, ticket to the top. Do I use that one? I don't know if I use that one. Kind of cool. So anyway, this is live. It's not secure. As you can see, it's not using HTTPS. So I can fix that real quick. I'm going to fix that on GitHub. But and there's some things I would clean up on here. This isn't necessarily the stuff that I would want on here. In fact, I might just forward the Baron to my website, because that's really what I'm doing. Is putting everything on my website. But hopefully this shows you how fast you can do this stuff with Claude Code. Some things I would do now is clean this up, maybe change the theme. Maybe I don't like the colors. You can see it makes a lot of errors. Like this isn't really that readable. It should be whiter text, in my opinion, so that it's more accessible. I think that would be really nice. If I look at some of these other sub pages, like I would want this formatted differently because it's writing. Like show me the blog post style. And what I'm going to do is I'll show you the last bit, which is getting GitHub to do this as a secure page. So here you would go to your repo, and you would go to settings, and then to pages. And in here, you're going to set a custom domain. So you set source to, so you set this to main, you use a custom domain, it does a DNS check. This might take a little while, but once it runs this check, it should allow me to enforce HTTPS. And sometimes GitHub needs to refresh this, so sometimes you have to go copy and hit remove, and then go back in here, paste it, hit save. It'll do a DNS check. Please wait. There, it checked it, and it's enforcing HTTPS. Now if I do a quick refresh, boom, secure. It's using the HTTPS version. Already live. Look at how fast that is. I mean, how many minutes did that take? Not even that many. And now if I want to make changes, I can just tell it, you know, like, for instance, what's one I want to remove? From the web page, from the home page, I want to remove media, or I don't know. What's really interesting is I didn't write this. And like, where is this? That doesn't exist. Okay, so all the write-ups basically need to go away, I think. Let's remove all the write-ups. Oh no, because they're about the projects, I think. Well, in any case, at this point, what you would do is start making changes. Like maybe you don't like the style. Maybe you want to change something else. When I built my original Matt Barron website, I said to make 20 versions of the UI. Like give me different UIs so that I can choose which one I actually like. And it made 20, and then I just told it which ones I liked. And then it made different versions of those. And you can, because you can build so much, you can do all these other things. You can spend time doing other things like writing the content, testing the web page, making sure it's secure. So if you like this video and more, please follow me on YouTube. Go to mattbarron.com and see what I'm working on. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Blue Sky. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope to see you again soon.